Hi, I'm Tom Rickey. Welcome to the EMSL Call for Proposal discussion. I am here with two EMSL scientists, Dr. Scott Baker and Dr. Nancy Hess. Thanks for tuning in. We'll just do a brief Q&A for maybe 10 or 15 minutes. There's a chat box, I believe, and you can send in your questions there. But I know Scott and Nancy have a lot of information to give, and then at the end there's a lot of, we'll put up their contact information, and we'd love questions. We hope you find this helpful. So I guess the first question would be, at least for me, what we hear a lot is EMSL is not exactly a household word. So what exactly is EMSL?
EMSL is the Environmental Molecular Sciences Laboratory. We're a DOE national user facility where scientists can send us proposals and we can use our cutting edge capabilities to help them answer some of their questions, accelerate their research, amplify their impact. And all of that is done, paid for by the Department of Energy.
Great. So why should someone take the time to put a proposal together to EMSL?
Well, it's a fantastic opportunity. As Scott mentioned, we have really state-of-the-art equipment that you wouldn't normally find or have access to at your home institution. But more than that, it's the scientists here that are experts at not only using that equipment, but working with, collaborating with the scientists to really focus that technique on the particular question they want to answer. So it goes all the way from collaboration to designing the experiment to the interpretation of the data to really address their question.
So does EMSL actually provide funds for people to do their work?
No, actually, the Department of Energy funds us to work with researchers. So researchers would send us their samples and we would process them, and our experts would be able to help the researchers, academics, other national labs, industry, interpret that data and really understand their processes at the molecular scale.
So is EMSL anything more than a collection of fancy instruments?
Oh, it's much, much more than that. It's really the integration of the instruments and the scientists that work here. And the science that we focus on is the science of, Department of Energy, but more specifically of biological environmental research. So it's really a place that you go to answer questions that are pertinent to that domain.
Okay, so is it a matter of basically a scientist just visiting and using an instrument? Is that pretty much it, or is there more to it?
So we have a proposal process that's open right now, actually. Researchers propose about 4 pages. There's a peer review of proposals in both biology and environmental research. Once those are selected, the users get access to EMSL. They can send a graduate student, they can come themselves, they can send us samples, but really it's, as Nancy said, interacting with our scientists and the experts here to do the science that they want to do on our instruments. So it's more than just a collection of instruments and coming here and using it. There is a proposal process and then interaction with our scientists.
Okay, so do you have any sense of how many scientists have been awarded proposals in the past or have gotten support through EMSL?
There's been more than 3,000 individuals that have used EMSL throughout its history. We get about 700 visitors a year through EMSL. So many of those are people that have come back to use us to address other science questions.
And so what are the odds? I mean, if someone goes through the trouble of getting a proposal together, do you have a sense of what your acceptance rate is like?
Yeah, it's actually quite good, about 35% acceptance in past years. That's no guarantee that it'll be that this coming year, but it's actually really quite good.
Okay, and who owns EMSL?
Well, it's, as Scott mentioned, it's Department of Energy, Office of Science, and then we're funded out of the Biological Environmental Research program there.
So what sort of science questions do people ask? Why? What are they wondering when they turn to EMSL to help them solve these questions?
So we look at a number of different systems in biology. We're interested in plant microbe interactions, biotechnology for biofuels, production of bioproducts, really questions in the DOE mission space in biology. And in the environment, Nancy can answer that.
So in the environment, we're interested in fundamentally quite similar processes as in Scott's area, but it's more in the natural ecosystem, and we're looking at concepts like nutrient and carbon cycling in the terrestrial ecosystem. We're looking at the processes that happen in the rhizosphere where the plants, roots, soils, and minerals and microbes interact. And again, we're looking and in terms of sustainability for bioenergy crops, but also in terms of soil health, ecosystem function, and in that context. I think another element that we're very interested in is contaminant transport in the subsurface, and also, I guess, something you may not think about it initially, but biogenic aerosols and how those also are an important process in the environment.
So there's a lot of resources people can turn to for research. Why EMSL? And what does EMSL bring to the table that other places might not?
So EMSL has, unlike many other user facilities in the Office of Science area, EMSL has a suite of instruments. And so, I mean, over 170 major instruments. And so scientists that can come here can use not just one technique, but multiple techniques. And again, it's not just the instruments, but it's the scientists here that also have backgrounds in these areas that can help focus those techniques and approaches most efficiently on the scientific problem. So it's really an acceleration, a way that a user can come in and accelerate their science in a new direction.
Okay, so I guess everyone wants to know what's the secret to a great proposal. I'm sure you guys have reviewed a ton of them, so there must be trends you see.
I think one of the most important things is to briefly, in the context of 4 pages, basically be able to tell a story and use the suite of instruments, but not just to collect a ton of data, but to actually focus it on a single problem. And I think the best proposals are ones where the reviewers read it and say, oh, okay, I understand what they're going to do. They're going to use all this data to answer this very specific question that's, of course, relevant to Department of Energy and BER. I think, and one of the other keys is to actually interact with our staff. So contacting Nancy and myself, and we can then push out the proposers to our experts in the different types of capabilities we have.
So can people contact you in advance? I mean, we've got a few weeks until the final deadline. Does this happen after they've submitted and have the proposal accepted, or are you available now?
Oh, we strongly encourage people to contact us now as they're developing their proposal, and we can help put in those key elements about what would be uniquely accomplished here at EMSL in their proposal. And these are questions that the reviewers are looking, for those answers. So what can they do at EMSL that they would not be able to do at their home institution?
Well, let's take a look at it a different way, right? So what's the what's the secret to a weak proposal? Where do a lot of proposals fail?
Maybe not stating a relevant scientific question, to our topical area. So being outside of scope, waiting to the last minute, missing the deadline. Those are all things that will lead to not having success. The other failure that I've seen, or mode of failure, is providing or listing like a laundry list. I'm going to do this, this, and this without a cohesion plan of how these are going to be integrated together to answer the question. So those are all.
Okay, great. And the deadline is, I think, March 5th. So
that's
coming up in a few weeks. So do visitors need to know how to operate the equipment? If their proposal is accepted, they get on a plane and you let them loose on the devices, or what
no, we do not let them loose on the devices. There's actually quite a bit of safety training before you would actually go into the labs, which is, of course, very important. But also our experts here are able to operate the instruments. Now, in some cases, some of the people that come in are expert operators and are able to operate the instrument or have operated something similar, so we can train them. But it's really a combination. There's no one size fits all. People can come here, do some sample prep, and maybe somebody else operates the analytical equipment. They can come here. We've had people come here and sit with our data, some of the people that crunch the data and try to interpret the results. So it's a whole wide range of types of interactions. And it's all the way, as I said, from graduate students to postdocs to the PIs themselves.
Okay, so how involved is the submission process?
It's a 4-page proposal, and there's a beautiful template online that provides guidance on the different sections that need to be filled out. But there's also quite a few appendices that need to be filled out. So again, I would give yourself a couple of days to get through the process. You'll need a 2-page CV. There's an appendix that requires requesting specific instruments and the number of samples that you're going to run. That table in particular is one where talking to us beforehand is really helpful to get good selection of the instrument that you want to use, as well as an idea of the number of samples that could be reasonably analyzed within the scope of the project.
In addition, you need to have an orchid ID. The submitter
right.
does.
Right. And all this information, did you say it's available on the website?
Mm-hmm. Right, right. And I think there'll be a link at the end of the broadcast here.
Right, good.
So,
is there anything else you guys wish to add?
well, I'm really eager to hear from folks. We love getting new science in and new scientists, and we have a lot of resources that I think would be very helpful to the research.
Yeah, bring your proposals. We're excited to have you work with us and help you put together a good proposal.
And you are at scott.baker@pnnl.gov?
Correct.
And nancy.hess@pnnl.gov.
That's me.
Available and waiting,
Yep.
hoping to help people with their proposals. So let's take a look, see if we have any questions. So looks like we have a question. How long does a typical proposal run?
People to our current call that's open get access to EMSL for up to 2 years. Occasionally there's a 3rd-year extension. There's a renewal after the 1st year, just to make sure that people are sending in their samples and that the project's progressing. But generally 2 years for this, and then there's other options after this closes of smaller proposals.
Okay. Let's see. It looks like how much is a typical proposal funded for? Like what is the value of the support that EMSL provides?
So it's interesting. It ranges quite a bit from about maybe 10K up to about 150K. And the cost of the proposal isn't something that is used as a metric for the review criterion, for example. So, and yeah, so that's about how it goes.
And does the support include travel cost for a PI or students?
So this is the thing. I mean, the support is really for only for the work done here at EMSL, and it's for our EMSL scientists to work with the users. So the users need to provide all the travel costs for coming to EMSL, if that's what they choose to do.
I see. And what about publications? Do you have a sense of how many publications have resulted from EMSL-based research?
It's quite a few. I think it's in the neighborhood of about 6,000, and a ton of citations over the last 20 years. That's a big deliverable for us. We want to publish this work. We want to get it out there so that it can move science forward.
Okay. Let's see if there are any other questions we have. And if not, it looks like we might have one. Yes, please hold on. I'm trying to read 10-point font from 15 feet away. Are there specific instruments that you're emphasizing?
We've had a lot of excitement about what we call the 21T. It's an ultra high resolution mass spectrometer. And this instrument is something that was built and designed, designed and constructed, modified here at EMSL. And what it's really good at is measuring the mass of individual molecules in very complex substrates. So we've been able to identify, tens of thousands of organic molecules in soil. We've been able to look at different metabolites in plant tissue, microbial cells, and putting all this chemical information together has really revealed some very interesting chemical pathways and relationships that were not known beforehand. So that's been very exciting.
We're also, we emphasize theory and experiment. So we have computational capabilities here that it's great if those can be incorporated into proposals. And if you're doing a computational proposal, it's great if you can get experimental work in there as well. So a combination of experiment and theory.
Gotcha. Instruments like the 21T, there aren't a lot of those out there, are there?
No, in fact, there's only 2 in the world. And so, yeah, This is,
And this one anyone can use with a good proposal.
that's right.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Another question is, are there instruments that are being de-emphasized at this point? I'm not sure if that means less available or.
Not that I know of.
Yeah, no, I think that we're, yeah.
So give me a sense, real quick, some of the types of instruments you have. I don't want a list of 170,
Yeah.
but just a couple of the groupings, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who don't know exactly what is here.
Light and ion microscopy, electron microscopy, mass spectrometry, all kinds of surface characterization, transcriptomics.
Yeah, and we also have X-ray capabilities, X-ray tomography, other types of imaging, advanced imaging like fluorescent probe type work. NMR is a huge capability here. I think, though, that it's also interesting to think about the type of science that we do as opposed to the instruments. So we do a lot of work in the rhizosphere. We have plant growth chambers. We do a lot of omics research. So we do everything from transcript down to proteomics, metabolomics. We do cell isolation.
High performance computing.
High performance computing, right.
Imaging mass spectrometry. We're probably missing some. But it's just a huge suite of instruments and capability and scientists here.
I always think of this collection of instruments as it's a way to take like the vital signs of a cell or a system. You've got, I don't know much about NMR myself, and then to go into a wing of a building that has multiple NMRs, one for this application, one for that application, is really pretty cool.
It is, and like you say, there are instruments, but also what has really distinguished EMSL capabilities as well is that we have a lot of very unique sample cells so that we can investigate the system underneath the conditions of the natural environment or the chemical reaction that you want. So we can do variable temperature, variable pressure, dynamic studies, for example, that are not necessarily just static experiments, but dynamic experiments.
Right. I remember speaking with one researcher who literally seemed thrilled that she could bring a clump of soil, and you've got all these clean room, high-tech facilities, and write dirt as dirt, and she was able to take her dirt and put it in this suite of instruments and get these answers in a way that she never had been able to do anywhere else, because they weren't allowed, those other places weren't allowed to put really dirty samples into the system. So
right. No, that's absolutely true. And so it's great because we're able to push forward in frontiers in dirt research that we're only available to like a biomedical facility or something like that. Yeah, absolutely.
BER focuses on microbes and plant systems. Will proposals focused on chemistry, such as heterogeneous catalysis and biomass, be considered?
We do consider high impact proposals, but our main emphasis is on biology and the environment and BER relevant science. So to the extent that this can be tied to BER bioenergy centers and that kind of thing, then those kind of proposals will be looked at. But again, the emphasis is biology and the environment.
Gotcha. Let's see if there are any other questions. Ooh, it looks like there's another one. Scrolling here. Is there still a laser ablation capillary absorption spectroscopy instrument available? Laser ablation capillary absorption spectroscopy.
Yeah, I know exactly
That's
what
a mouthful.
Well,
I'm glad she knows.
I'm not sure if that is. I would have to check and get back. That was a technique that we had done a lot of development on, and then we were partnering with industry to see that if we could transfer that technology over. And I don't know whether that handshake has occurred or not. So that would be
right. It's funny you bring up this partnership with industry. I think just in the last month, PNNL and EMSL staff have gotten R&D awards and FLC awards for partnering with industry on these types of things.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that's the instruments that we have available really are not what you find on the shelf, right? Can purchase commercially, and so we do a lot of modification to these. These often are of great appeal to, industry research communities want them. And so we do have quite a strong partnership with industry. Mass spectrometry has been one of those areas that we've done quite a bit of partnership with.
Right. I think I have another question here. Is it better to propose a range of techniques, or is utilizing a single technique in multiple ways acceptable?
Both.
Both. Of course.
Both work. We want to see our capability. Again, the main thing is to have a question that's focused and that the data that you're collecting is relevant to. So if it's transcriptomics and microscopy and mass spectrometry, that's great. But if it's different flavors of mass spectrometry or microscopy, that's also great. We're here to answer these questions, and it's whatever it takes to get it done. And I should add that we oftentimes, as a proposal, once something's accepted, we can modify the types of experiments that are done on the fly, such that if someone's here and we think we might need a different technique, we can figure out how to work that in.
So they're not, so once once their proposal's been accepted, they might be here on site. The experiment's underway. If they realize they need a different type of data, perhaps they can modify that with you guys, working with you.
Pending availability of equipment and
Right.
all those kind of caveats. But yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Dr. Hess mentioned biogenic aerosols. Was she referring to secondary organic aerosols from biogenic precursors, or primary biological aerosols, or both?
I was referring mostly to primary biological organic aerosols.
Okay, there you go. Let's see if there's any other questions there. So people have got 3 weeks. That's pretty cool. They could even, not that they want to get email a pre-proposal, but they could just send you guys a couple of ideas they might have.
Absolutely.
And you could give a sense of whether, it might fly or what types of modifications might be needed.
Yeah, we have a correspondence in a variety of different mechanisms. Some people do just send a couple of bullets, is this the right idea? Some people will send us a draft of their proposal,
Right.
Or we have a series of conference calls. And typically, we can really help develop those proposals quite a bit with that kind of input.
Okay, well, I think we have one more question here. Is there anything unique about computational proposals if they are not directly connected to an experimental technique? Let me repeat that. Is there anything unique about computational proposals if they are not directly connected to an experimental technique?
I think every good proposal needs to, again, point to the relevance to BER mission and our call topics. It needs to be something understandable to a peer review panel that is looking at a wide swath of, in my case, biology, in Nancy's case, the environment. So there shouldn't be really anything unique. It shouldn't be filled with, just like any proposal, it shouldn't be filled with jargon that only a computational scientist would understand.
Right.
It should be widely readable.
Okay, great. So just a reminder, so thanks for visiting. And this webinar will be available on EMSL's YouTube channel in perpetuity. So thank you for visiting. Thank you, Scott and Nancy.
Thank you.
Okay.